This is Radar for On the Radar Table, coming to you with weeks 20 of the offseason, the Hotstove edition for the 21 offseason going into 2022. This is part 2 with the lockout. So much had happened, I had to do 2 videos last week, so this week I'm doing 2 videos. Let's start here. Dodgers signed Kevin Pillar to a minor league deal, as I mentioned many times. They refuse to want to play A.J. Pollock and Mookie Betts in center field. The two of them are natural-born center fielders and we're pretty good at there. They like to play utility infielder Chris Taylor in center field. Okay, fine, you become a utility player. And they play Cody Bellinger in center field, and we've been over this. Not an outfielder by trade. He's very valuable, and he hasn't stayed healthy. Why would you throw him in center field? Just play him in the corner spot or DH, or not even DH. And get Freddie Freeman, so that's out of the question. So signing Kevin Pillar on a minor league deal, I have a good intuition that he can make this team be your fourth outfielder, come in and push everybody to the corners late innings. That's a good move. Twins have DFA'd Ralph Garza Jr., but the Red Sox picked him up because the Red Sox, again, their bullpen, as I mentioned, are looking for players. They DFA'd Kyle Tyler. Dodgers have hired Doncho Willis as special assistant. That's cool. The greatest pitcher in Marlins history is working for the Dodgers. So the arbitration, Devers, Vladdy Jr., Teoscar Hernandez, Frankie Montes, Pete Alonso, Trey Turner, Joey Gallo, Juan Soto, and Josh Bell have avoided arbitration, and they said right now, and that the Royals with the Mundasai, the Guardians, had Red Rosario, the Reds and Nick Senzel and Tyler Naquin, and the Blue Jays and Ross Stripling for arbitration deal. And right now, the Braves have 5 of the 31 cases with Swanson, Duvall, Lou Jackson, Fried, and Riley, and 6 of the 31 players who've been traded this offseason: Winker, Frazier, Sanchez, Bassett, and Stalling. So there are 200 players who are eligible players have agreed to contracts with their team, most of which occurred prior to Tuesday's filing. The hearings are going to take place during the season. If agreements are not reached, it's kind of awkward to be going back and forth on deals during the actual season and insulting and stuff like that. Some of the players who haven't signed their arbitration deals are Judge, Contreras, and Swanson, just to name some. And the White Sox weren't able to get to a deal with Lucas Giolito. And that's with the arbitration news there. And the Diamondbacks have picked up Zach Davies. Zach Davies is very underrated. He was a Brewers' top pitcher, went to San Diego, went to the Cubs. He can definitely help out this Diamondbacks team that doesn't have a lot of great pitching depth. And if it works out, like I mentioned in the first video, some of those relievers they signed, flip them to the deadline. Marlins have DFA'd Azan Diaz. The dude who opts out of the COVID then comes back. Because they're playing Jazz Chisholm at second base, and they refuse to put him at shortstop because they're in love with Miguel Rojas, and now they have Joey Wendell as a utility guy, and they still have John Birdie on the team, there's not really room for Diaz. Reds have signed Hunter Strickland. If that dude's healthy, he was a very good relief pitcher a few years back. And again, they could always flip him at the deadline, which I know they can do. Giants signed Darren Ruff to a 2-year extension. That's a good with a DH. That's going to be helpful. Chapman did sign a 2-year extension with the Blue Jays, who just traded for him. And it was reported that he did turn down a 10-year, under $50 million deal. I'm guessing he's like, well, in a couple of years I'll be a free agent and maybe I can make more. But with the way the free agency is now, they're not always giving these people those huge contracts. So I don't know if he really wants to gamble like that. Phillies have DFA'd Luke Williams. They don't need him with all the moves they made. Mariners again signed another veteran relief pitcher in Sal Romano. The one-time starting pitcher with the Reds has bounced around as a relief pitcher most recently with the Yankees. He is definitely someone who can help out this team, and if not, flip on the deadline. So, as I mentioned, the Red Sox have DFA'd Kyle Tucker. Well, earlier in the week, they had claimed him. But now they've also DFA'd Hudson Pop. Louis Castillo and Justin Dunn, I mentioned them starting the year in the DL. Astros have signed Franklin Barreto on a minor league deal after just signing Nico Goodrum to a major league deal. Having a guy like Barreto, a one-time highly touted prospect, as a middle infielder with the the A's and the Angels, the Astros could use him as a backup infielder at this point. Twins have signed Chichi Gonzalez to a minor league deal. The one-time Ranger and Rockies pitcher is a starting pitcher, but he's also been a relief pitcher. And with the Twins, they need some organizational depth in the rotation and the bullpen, so that's a good move there. Cubs have DFA'd Sergio Alcantara. That's a utility player. The Cubs have a lot of utility players on the roster, like in Wisdom, and now Jonathan VR, that you kind of don't need him. Cleveland has signed Brian Shaw back on the team. He was there briefly last year. They bring him back. It's good to have a veteran in that bullpen because Emmanuel Clase is like the only really big-time reliever in that bullpen, and then some. So, again, the Indians are not really going anywhere, so Brian Shaw, I could see him being traded at the deadline. Mariners signed Sergio Romo to a major league deal. So this time the Mariners signed a reliever to a major league deal that will definitely help out this bullpen because he's been a closer and a setup man before, and they can always flip him at the deadline. So that's a good move by them. Red Sox have DFA Jessen Rosario because all the moves they made. Dodgers have DFA Matt Beatty. I'm surprised. The first base prospect who they'd had for a couple of years coming into pinch hit, asking him to play third base when he's a first baseman, asking him to play corner outfield when he's a first baseman because between him and Rios, and they had Muncy, and they had Bellinger, they had so many guys who could play first base, and then Albert Pujols for a bit, it was like, okay, cool. There's no room. So with the moves they made, they don't need a first base guy, but I could see him going to like more than half the league that could need a first baseman. With a DH, he'd have to always worry about the National League. But the American League, he can actually go to the National League, so it's a good thing for him. Reds sometime signed Tommy Pham. Well, I don't know what Tommy Pham's thinking. They're not going anywhere. So he's in left field. The question is, who's going to be in right field? Aquino, Akiyama, are they going to platoon them? Is Nick Dell going to play center field, or are you going to let Alberto Moore get at bats in center field? So their outfield's a little bit of a mixed bag, but at least Tommy Pham, if he plays well enough, the Reds are going to flip him. You watch it. Phillies with Duval Barrero, who had the opening shot to be the everyday center fielder. He is going to start the year in the DL, so that looks like Halsey or Mickey Moniak can actually be the open day center fielder. A's have signed Stephen Vogt, as it appears, to a major league deal to be the backup catcher to Sean Murphy. The A's have gone through a good amount of backup catchers in the past couple of years, including Yan Gomes and Aramis Garcia, to name some. So this is a good one because it's obviously everybody's a DH, but the DH, this team doesn't really have a great DH. They don't even really have a first base with Matt Olson's trade. That Vogt can get some at bats at first base and DH to get his bat in the lineup. Reds have signed JT Riddle to a minor deal, and I really like that because the Reds don't really have a shortstop. Okay, asking Kyle Tucker, who's a catcher, by trade to play shortstop, or they had Suarez do it. I'd rather have Nick Senzel, who's a natural-born infielder, go back to playing shortstop, but they're going to throw Nick Senzel in the outfield. So Riddle's a good chance of making this team as a backup on this team, but I definitely see him getting some at-bats at shortstop because the Marlins didn't give him a fair shake and the Pirates didn't give him a fair shake, so that's a good move. The Rays signed Luke Bard, the former Angels minor league pitcher, to minor league deal. I could see them using him really well, making the bullpen and helping them out. Jonathan Stevens gone on the 6th DL for the White Sox, so cancel him out as a potential fifth starter or reliever for the White Sox. And they picked up this Yohan Ibar after the Yankees picked him up. The White Sox are probably going to hold on to him. I don't think they're going to actually use him. Rays signed Robert Duggar to a minor league deal again. Can start and relieve. So I can see them using him as a swing guy or whatever they want to do with they makeshift bullpens and how they change things around. Cleveland signed Jake Jewell to a minor league deal. I can see making the bullpen as a veteran, as a guy who's been in the big league, and flipping him. Angels have extended Max Stassi to a 3-year deal. Their platoon catcher with Kurt Suzuki, they want to keep him around because he's a good defensive catcher. That's fine by me. Braves signed R.J. Alanias and Brennan Brennan to minor league deals. Brandon Brennan has pitched at least in the major leagues for more time than R.J. But again, organizational depth, good move there. Mike Fiers officially joined the Mexican League because he was, on minor league deals the past 3 years. If he pitches well enough there, I can see somebody trying to pick him up. Cubs have DFA Tommy Nance, the relief pitcher. They don't need him on the roster. Both Hudson Potts, who the Red Sox DFA'd, and Eric Hanna, who the Pirates DFA'd, have cleared waivers because nobody claimed them. Yohan Mercedes announced he's going to have hand surgery, so any chance of him playing for the White Sox in the short term is definitely not going to happen. Kyle Seeger, who did retire this year, the Rangers actually called him up and said, hey, would you like to play with your brother Corey? Imagine a left side of the infield, the two of them, or at least Tim getting at bats at first base or DH if he's not really good third baseman. That would have been cool. The Rangers trying to make the playoffs. You have the Seeger brothers, who at 34, Kyle Seeger can still be a good hitter. If he's not the great defensive player that he used to be, then guess what? You move him to first base or DH, not a big deal. But he turned it down. He was happy to be retired. Nationals and Orioles TV announcers, they've announced that those announcers are not going to be traveling to start the season. I think that's stupid, trying to calling it from a distance. This is not part of the pandemic 2020, and this is not even 2021. That is stupid. Ryan Zimmerman, who announced his retirement, we talked about this, both on the video and the podcast. They've officially announced they're going to retire number 11. No one else is going to wear it. Makes sense. He is Mr. National. Some private investigators have looked into the David Ortiz shooting and said that it looked like a drunk kingpin has targeted Ortiz. That'd be a cool story for a movie. I don't know how true this is, but that's pretty interesting to think there was a drug kingpin. Kevin Goldstein, who, writing for Baseball Perspective and Fangraphs and all these other sites that do like baseball analytics, has joined the Twins front office after previously working with the Astros a few years back. The Red Sox announced that they're going to wear number 2 Jeremy Remy patches in honor of the late broadcaster and player. That's good. Royals are going to have a patch for Art Stewart, who was a scouting director and had been working with the team in front office and player development since their existence in Kansas City. So that's a nice gesture by them. And New York has lifted the vaccination requirement for athletes, so NBA fans go, ooh, cool, Kyrie Irving gets to play. Baseball fans are like, cool. If Aaron Judge has reported that he's not vaccinated, the Mets have players too, besides from other Yankees players, they get to play in their hometown, and they don't got to worry about, this issue of being an employee and playing in New York. And Dwayne Carper is back calling Giants games after unfortunately losing his wife. All the best for him. He's one of the best play-by-play guys in baseball. And Major League Baseball Network's announced they're doing a Donnie baseball documentary about Don Mattingly's baseball career. That's going to be cool to watch. I really would like to watch that because he's an interesting guy. And they came out with a list of the teams that spent the least in free agency according to Jeff Passan. So you know who's number 1? The 8th. Because they got rid of everybody. So signing Stephen Vogt and someone else doesn't really count, I guess, in this ranking. The Cleveland Guardians spending only $900K because, again, Brian Shaw and whoever else, not really. The Reds, who also traded away everybody on their team, $5.5 million is okay because they did get some guy. And the Orioles did sign, Ruben Odor and Jordan Lyles and Robinson Chirino, so, 7.9. And the Brewers, they signed Andrew McCutchen, so 12.9 and some other guys here. The ones who spent the most are the Rangers, who we talked about, the Seeger, Simeon, Jonathan Gray, etc. The Dodgers signed Freddie Freeman and a bunch of other guys. Re-signed them, kept them. And the Mets, who signed, Canna, Starling Marte, traded for Chris Bassett, and signed Max Scherzer. So, of course, they're third with $25.5 million. And the Tigers, who spent $235.5 million, signed Eduardo Rodriguez and Javi Baez. They didn't really sign a lot of other dudes, but they put a lot of money into one starting pitcher and one position player. And the Phillies spending $204.15 million. Yeah, they signed Schwarber, and they signed Nicky Castellanos, and they signed some relief pitchers. So that makes sense there. And the most valuable franchise, according to Forbes, are the Yankees at $6 billion, because of course they're like the Cowboys and Duke basketball. The Dodgers being right after there at $4.075 billion, because they spent a lot of money and they're in a Los Angeles team. The Red Sox and the Cubs at 3.9 and 3.8 respectively. That makes sense. They've been relevant and popular. The Giants, $3.5 billion. The Mets, $2.65 billion. That makes sense. The other New York team, another California team. The Cardinals, who have been good for years and organizational, worth $2.45 billion. The Phillies, $2.3. Big city franchise. The Angels, the other California team that's big time, being worth $2.2. And the Braves, even though it's Atlanta's a big city, so they're worth $2.1 billion there. I want to get to Andrew Miller's announcing his retirement. The 36-year-old left-handed pitcher spent the last few years of his career with the Cardinals. We all remember him as a top prospect, starting pitching with the Tigers. And they're like, you know what? They're like, okay, cool. Let's trade him to the Marlins for that huge Miguel Cabrera trade. And he was supposed to be this great starting pitcher because he had a good college career. Well, at University of Carolina, did not work out. Injuries, performance. Then he officially became a relief pitcher and went for like a decade plus being this great relief pitcher, setup man, closer, finishing with 63 saves. He did finish with a .500 record of 55-55 and a 4 ERA and .979 just under 1,000 strikeouts. But that's good being a failed top pitching prospect to become one of the best relief pitchers, lefty specialists, closers for years with the Yankees and the Indians, and making 2 All-Star appearances and with the Yankees and the Indians, and win that World Series in 2013. Though with the Red Sox, he's got that on his mantle. He was the ALCS MVP in 2016 with the Yankees, and won Reliever of the Year in 2015 with the Yankees, and he won the World Baseball Classic this past year. The couple years back in 2017 when the United States was there. So he's got a World Series ring. He's got a gold medal. He's got Reliever of the Year, an ALCS MVP, and 2 All-Star appearances, and really turned around his career from what it could have been just complete failure. The last thing is there was an actual trade. All these are signing, cutting players, DFAing, claiming them. Another trade happened. The Blue Jays have traded Randall Grichuk to the Rockies for infielder Adrian Pinto, which doesn't really that much for the Jays because they're trying to win, so this just throw a prospect in the minor league. But they get Raimel Tapia. I'll say this about Randall Grichuk. He is not a center fielder. The Cardinals didn't have a center fielder, so he and Biscotti took turns playing center field in St. Louis, and they weren't center fielders. They're corner guys. Blue Jays, even though they've had like 3 or 4 center fielders on their 40-man roster, every single one they've either traded or given up on and gone somewhere else. And they just signed George Springer, who also is not a center fielder but wasn't healthy a lot last year. Teoscar Hernandez, who has played center field and gone back and forth. They give him way too many bats in center field, Grichuk, and again, Dickerson last year too. That right now this team is just going Springer center, Hernandez right, and Gurriel in left field. That's what they're going with. So they're like, yep, and we got the DH covered as well. So they're just like, yeah, we're good. We're going to trade Grichuk for Raimel Tapia. Now, people in Colorado go, oh no, Tapia's not a great center fielder. I'm like, Tapia's not your point center fielder. The Rockies didn't even give him a full chance. They just moved Blackman to right, moved him to left, so that Ian Desmond could have played center field. And then Desmond never actually really played in the outfield for the Rockies because the whole opting out. And, you know, how African-American treated, you wanted to make a protest, things like that. So Tapia is going to really help the Blue Jays team because he's an actual center fielder. He's a great singles contact hitter and is really fast. And he can come in and come in for one of these guys. If anybody gets hurt or they start a day at DH, he's going to be useful because the Blue Jays are actually going to the playoffs, so Tapia is going to be helpful. The Rockies, Charlie Blackmon's in right field, and I mentioned they have Hilliard and Daza earlier in this video or the other video, and they're playing a shortstop at Garrett Hampson in center field, and they just signed Chris Bryant to play left field. Their outfield could be Chris Bryant in left field, Grichuk in center field, and Charlie Blackmon in right field or Garrett Hampson in center field. That's probably one of the worst defensive outfielders because we know Grichuk's a corner guy and Bryant's not an outfielder, and Hampson's a shortstop. Because the Rockies got a DH, you can always just give Chris Bryant and Grichuk split the DH at bats. I can see that. But the Tapia move is definitely going to help the Blue Jays. I'm not saying that Grichuk's not going to help the Rockies, but the Rockies are not really going anywhere. But thanks again for listening to video 2 of the week 20 of the 2021 off season going into the 2022 season Hotstove edition. For On the Renner Tay blog, I'm Radar. See you guys next time.